The phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m., cutting through the silence like a rusty blade. I knew it was Vanessa before I even opened my eyes. My wife had a talent for ruining peaceful moments, especially when money was involved. "Derek, thank God you answered." Her voice was shrill, competing with pulsing club music in the background. "My card got declined and we can't leave. I need you to send $2,000 right now." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I sat up in our king-sized bed, the one she'd insisted we buy on credit despite my protests. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, also her choice, also overpriced. Everything in our house screamed Vanessa's expensive taste and my stretched bank account. "Where exactly are you?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. The Lighthouse Club downtown had become her second home lately. "Does it matter? Just send the money. Lila's here and she's mortified. Her father owns half the businesses in this city, Derek. I can't be embarrassed like this." Lila Morrison, Vanessa's best friend and fellow social climber, the woman who posted every meal on Instagram and treated charity events like fashion shows. Of course she was involved. $2,000, I repeated slowly, letting the number hang in the air. "For what exactly?" "Bottle service, dinner, tips. Derek, please, everyone's watching. The security guard is being so rude and there are people here for my work. This is humiliating." I walked to our bedroom window, looking out at the quiet suburban street. Our neighbors were asleep, like normal people at 3 a.m. They weren't calling their spouses demanding thousands of dollars to escape nightclub embarrassment. "Vanessa, we talked about this. The credit cards are maxed out, and we have exactly $1,200 in our checking account. That's supposed to last until my next paycheck? Then transfer money from savings." "What savings?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You spent our emergency fund on that event planning course that you never finished." The background noise grew louder. I could hear Lila's voice, sharp and demanding. "Tell him it's an emergency. Tell him about my father's connections. Derek, Lila says her father might have work for you. Good work. But not if we're humiliated tonight. Please, just this once." Just this once. The phrase she'd used when she bought the designer handbag, and the expensive wine for her book club, and the weekend spa retreat that cost more than our mortgage payment. "Ask Lila's father for the money," I said calmly, "if he's so well connected and generous." "I can't do that. He doesn't know that things are tight right now." But she could call me at 3 a.m. demanding money we didn't have. The hypocrisy was breathtaking, even for Vanessa. "Then ask Lila. Or better yet, ask whoever's been paying for your other recent nights out." Silence. For a moment, even the club music seemed to fade. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm not stupid, Vanessa. New jewelry, expensive lunches, shopping trips you can't account for. Someone's been funding your lifestyle, and it hasn't been me. You're being paranoid and cruel. I work hard at my job, and sometimes clients give gifts. It's normal in event planning. At 3 a.m. in nightclubs? Derek, please. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Just send the money." I looked at our wedding photo on the nightstand. We'd been happy once, or at least I thought we had. Vanessa looked radiant in her dress, smiling at the camera while I gazed at her with obvious adoration. The man in that photo wouldn't recognize who I'd become, tired, suspicious, and tired of being treated like an ATM. "No," I said quietly. "What?" "No. Figure it out yourself. And Vanessa? Don't call me again tonight." I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in months, I smiled as I went back to sleep. The next morning brought coffee, sunshine, and a call from the police. "Mr. Lawson, this is Officer Patricia Santos with the Portland Police Department. Your wife was detained last night at the Lighthouse Club. She attempted to dispute charges on a credit card that was legitimately declined." I sat at our kitchen table, still in my pajamas, trying to process this information. Detained? She became belligerent with club security and accused them of fraud when her card was declined. The club manager decided to press charges for disturbing the peace and attempted fraud. She was released this morning on her own recognizance. Will there be charges?" "That depends on whether the club decides to pursue it. Your wife claimed you would verify her authorization to use the card, but when we couldn't reach you, my phone was off." "Yes, she mentioned that. Several times. She seemed quite upset about it." I thanked Officer Santos and hung up, then immediately called my friend Miles. Miles Rodriguez had been my roommate in college and was now a private investigator. More importantly, he was one of the few people who saw through Vanessa's charm from the beginning. "Derek, how's married life treating you?" Miles answered on the first ring, his voice cheerful despite the early hour. "Vanessa spent the night in jail." "What?" What happened? I told him everything, the 3 a.m. call, the declined card, my refusal to send money, and the police call. Miles listened without interruption, which I appreciated. Most people felt compelled to offer advice or judgment, but Miles just absorbed information. So what are you going to do? He asked when I finished. I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to bail her out of this mess, like I always do. But I'm tired, Miles. I'm tired of being the responsible one while she acts like money grows on trees. When's the last time you two were happy? The question caught me off guard. I tried to remember the last time Vanessa and I had enjoyed each other's company without discussing bills, her social obligations, or my apparent failures as a husband. I can't remember, I admitted. That's your answer right there. Before I could respond, I heard Vanessa's key in the front door. She entered like a storm system, all dramatic sighs and wounded dignity. Derek, there you are. Do you have any idea what I've been through? She looked terrible. Her makeup was smeared, her designer dress wrinkled, and her hair hung in limp strands around her face. For a moment, I felt sorry for her. The police called. They said you were detained. Detained, like a common criminal, because my husband wouldn't answer his phone or help me in an emergency. She threw her purse on the counter, and I noticed it was a new one I hadn't seen before. Expensive leather, gold hardware. Vanessa, we don't have $2,000 to spend on nightclub bills. It wasn't just nightclub bills. Lila and I had dinner first, and then we met some potential clients. This was business, Derek. Networking. But you wouldn't understand that because you never leave your computer. What potential clients? Important people. Connected people. The kind of people who could help both of us if you weren't so stubborn and antisocial. I noticed she hadn't actually answered my question. Who bought you that purse? She glanced down at the bag as if seeing it for the first time. This? I've had this forever. No, you haven't. I've never seen it before, and I know you don't have the money for something that expensive. God, Derek, you're like a detective. Can't a woman buy herself something nice without getting the 3rd degree? With what money? I have my own income. Your part-time event planning job that pays $800 a month? Vanessa's face flushed red. You know what? I don't have to justify every purchase to you, especially not after the way you treated me last night. Do you know how humiliating it was to be escorted out of that club, in front of Lila and everyone else? Do you know how humiliating it is to be called at 3 a.m. and treated like a personal bank? I'm your wife. Then act like it. The words hung between us, sharp and final. Vanessa stared at me with genuine shock, as if she couldn't believe I'd raised my voice. I can't believe you're blaming me for this, she said quietly. I was in trouble, and you abandoned me. You were in trouble because you spent money we don't have on things we don't need. Again. Those people could have helped your career. What people, Vanessa? You keep mentioning these mysterious connections, but you won't tell me who they are or how you know them. She grabbed her purse and headed for the stairs. I'm going to shower and change. When I come back down, I hope you're ready to apologize. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, then the slam of our bedroom door. Miles was still on the phone, having heard the entire argument. You okay, man? Yeah, I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. Miles, can I ask you for a favor? Anything. Can you do some checking on Vanessa's activities? Quietly. You sure you want to go down that road? I looked around our kitchen, taking in the expensive appliances we couldn't afford, the designer coffee maker that made mediocre coffee, the imported tile backsplash that cost more than most people's cars. I think I'm already on that road. I just need to know where it leads. Miles called me back 3 days later while I was at work. I stepped out of my software development office and took the call in the parking lot, away from curious ears. Derek, we need to talk. In person. What did you find? Not over the phone. Meet me at Murphy's bar after work. And Derek, you're not going to like this. Murphy's bar was the kind of place where nobody cared about your problems, and the beer was cheap. Miles was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a manila folder in front of him. Okay, I said, sliding into the booth. Let me have it. Miles opened the folder and spread out several photographs. Your wife has been very busy. The first photo showed Vanessa entering an upscale restaurant with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-dressed, probably in his early 40s. His hand was on the small of her back in a gesture that was definitely not platonic. Who is he? Aiden Price. He owns 3 nightclubs in the city, including the Lighthouse, where she got arrested. Also has interests in several restaurants and a small real estate company. I stared at the photo, trying to process what I was seeing. How long has this been going on? Based on credit card records and social media posts, at least 3 months, probably longer. Miles pulled out more photos. Here's them at lunch last Tuesday. Here's them shopping downtown, and here... He paused, looking uncomfortable. Here's them going into the Marriott downtown last Thursday afternoon. The last photo hit me like a physical blow. Vanessa was laughing at something Aiden had said, her hand on his arm, looking happier than I'd seen her in months. Thursday afternoon, I repeated. She told me she was at a client meeting. I'm sorry, man. I really am. I ordered a whiskey and drank it slowly, studying the photos. Everything made sense now. The new clothes, the expensive purse, the mysterious networking events, the late nights out with Lila. There's more, Miles said gently. The financial stuff. He showed me printouts of credit card statements and bank records. I wasn't sure how he'd obtained them, and I decided I didn't want to know. She's been getting cash advances on credit cards I didn't know existed, cards in her maiden name, with a P.O. box I've never heard of. She's also been depositing cash into a separate checking account. How much cash? About $1,500 a month for the past 4 months. I did the math. $6,000 that hadn't come from her part-time job or our joint accounts. Gifts from Aiden? That would be my guess. The deposits always happen within a day or two of their meetings. I finished my whiskey and ordered another. The bar was filling up with after-work drinkers, people laughing and complaining about their jobs and their lives. Normal people with normal problems. What else? She's been lying about her work schedule. That event planning job, she only works there about 10 hours a week. The rest of the time she's been shopping, going to spas, meeting with Aiden, or hanging out with Lila. While I'm working 50-hour weeks to pay our bills. Yeah. I studied the photos again. In every one, Vanessa looked relaxed and happy. She was wearing clothes I'd never seen, jewelry that was definitely new, and an expression of contentment that had been missing from our marriage for months. She's been living a completely different life, I said. Looks that way. And I've been paying for our life while Aiden pays for her fun life. That's about the size of it. I thought about all the arguments we'd had about money, all the times she'd made me feel guilty for questioning her spending, all the nights I'd lain awake worrying about our debt while she slept peacefully beside me. I want to confront her, I said. Hold on. Think about this carefully. What's your goal here? My goal? Do you want to save your marriage? Do you want a divorce? Do you want revenge? Because your next move depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I considered the question. A week ago, I might have said I wanted to save my marriage. But looking at these photos, seeing the evidence of Vanessa's deception and betrayal, I realized that the marriage I thought I was trying to save had never really existed. I want her to face consequences, I said finally. For once in her life, I want her to face real consequences for her actions. Miles nodded. Then we need to be smart about this. Confronting her now just gives her a chance to spin the story, make herself the victim, and probably run straight to Aiden for comfort and support. So what do you suggest? We gather more evidence. We document everything. And then we choose the time and place for maximum impact. Over the next hour, Miles outlined a plan. It was devious, thorough, and completely unlike anything I'd ever considered doing. But then again, I'd never been systematically betrayed by someone I loved. There's one more thing, Miles said as we prepared to leave. Lila Morrison knows about the affair. How do you know? I followed them to lunch yesterday. Lila was there for part of it. She left when things got intimate, but she was definitely aware of what was happening. So Vanessa's best friend was complicit in the deception. The same woman who came to our house for dinner parties, who hugged me and called me brother-in-law, who had been encouraging Vanessa's reckless spending and late-night adventures. They're all in on it, I said. Looks that way. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling with everything I'd learned. When I pulled into our driveway, I saw Vanessa's car was gone. A note on the kitchen counter explained that she was having dinner with Lila and would be home late. I looked around our house with new eyes. The expensive furniture, the designer decorations, the imported rugs, all of it purchased with debt while Vanessa lived her secret life with Aiden's money. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Don't wait up. Lila's having relationship drama and needs support. I almost laughed at the irony. I texted back, take your time. For the first time since I'd seen those photos, I smiled. 2 weeks later, I was ready to make my move. Miles and I had gathered enough evidence to fill a small filing cabinet, and I'd spent countless hours planning every detail of what was about to happen. The opportunity came when Vanessa announced she was attending a charity gala at the Riverside Hotel. It was one of the city's biggest social events, with local business leaders, politicians, and society types. Exactly the kind of gathering where public embarrassment would have maximum impact. You should come with me, Vanessa said, though her tone suggested she hoped I'd decline. Lila bought a table, and there might be networking opportunities for you. I don't think so. Those events aren't really my scene. That's your problem, Derek. You never want to socialize or make connections. Do you know how hard it is to explain why my husband never comes to anything? I almost pointed out that she'd been managing just fine without me, but I held my tongue. You go and have fun. I'll probably work late anyway. She seemed relieved. Okay, but don't complain later that you don't know anyone important in this city. The night of the gala, I watched Vanessa get ready with unusual interest. She'd bought a new dress for the occasion, a sleek black number that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. Her jewelry was new too, including a diamond bracelet I'd never seen before. That's beautiful, I said, nodding at the bracelet. When did you get it? Oh, this old thing? I've had it forever. Really? I don't remember seeing it before. She fastened the clasp without meeting my eyes. I don't wear it very often. It was my grandmother's. Another lie. Vanessa's grandmother had passed away when she was 12, and I'd seen all the jewelry she'd inherited. This bracelet wasn't part of that collection. Well, you look stunning, I said, and meant it. Whatever else was wrong between us, Vanessa was still a beautiful woman. She kissed my cheek, careful not to disturb her lipstick. Don't wait up. These things usually run late. After she left, I waited 30 minutes, then drove to the hotel. Miles was waiting in the lobby, dressed in a rented tuxedo and carrying a small camera bag. You clean up nice, I told him. Thanks. I bought a ticket to this thing under a fake name. Cost me $400, so this better work. It'll work. We'd timed everything perfectly. The gala was in full swing, with about 300 people mingling in the hotel's grand ballroom. I spotted Vanessa immediately. She was at a table near the front, laughing with Lila and several other women I recognized from her social circle. Aiden Price was there too, though he was sitting at a different table, smart of them to maintain some distance in public, but I noticed the way they kept glancing at each other across the room. There's our boy, Miles murmured, nodding toward Aiden. Right where you said he'd be. Phase 1 of our plan was simple. I would approach Aiden privately and let him know I was aware of the affair. Not to confront him, but to plant seeds of doubt about Vanessa's discretion and trustworthiness. I found my opportunity when Aiden stepped out onto the hotel's terrace for a phone call. I followed him outside, keeping my distance until he finished his conversation. Mr. Price? He turned, looking confused. Yes? Derek Lawson, Vanessa's husband. The color drained from his face, but he recovered quickly. Oh, Derek, Vanessa's mentioned you. Nice to finally meet you. He extended his hand, and I shook it. His palm was sweaty. I'm sure she has. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For being so generous to my wife. The jewelry, the shopping trips, the cash deposits. It's very kind of you. Aiden's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'm not sure what you mean. Of course you do. The question is, does your wife know how generous you've been? I'd done my homework on Aiden, too. He was married to a prominent surgeon who came from old Portland money. Their marriage was as much a business arrangement as a romantic one, but divorce would cost him significantly. Look, I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. I know about the affair, Aiden. I know about the money. I know about the hotel visits. I know everything. He glanced around nervously, making sure we were alone on the terrace. What do you want? Nothing. Yet. I just wanted you to know that your secret isn't as secret as you think. And Aiden? Vanessa talks. A lot. To Lila, to her other friends, to anyone who'll listen. She's not as discreet as you might hope. That last part was a lie, but Aiden didn't know that. I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. Are you threatening me? Not at all. I'm just sharing information. What you do with it is up to you. I left him standing on the terrace and returned to the ballroom, where Phase 2 was about to begin. Miles had positioned himself near Vanessa's table with his camera ready. Our plan was to capture her reaction when she received a very special message. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Vanessa. Hope you're enjoying your evening with Aiden. The bracelet looks lovely on you. A concerned friend. From across the room, I watched her check her phone. Her face went white, and she immediately looked around the ballroom as if searching for threats. She showed the message to Lila, who also began scanning the crowd nervously. Miles captured it all. The shock, the fear, the whispered conversation between the two women. Within minutes, Vanessa had excused herself from the table and was heading for the ladies' room. I followed at a distance and positioned myself outside the restroom, close enough to hear raised voices through the door. Told you this was a bad idea, Vanessa was saying. How could anyone know? Lila's voice was shrill with panic. You've been so careful. Someone knows about the bracelet. Someone's been watching us. Do you think it's Derek? Derek's too clueless to figure this out, but someone told him. I smiled grimly. Even now, even caught red-handed, Vanessa couldn't give me credit for basic intelligence. They emerged from the restroom a few minutes later, both looking shaken. Vanessa immediately pulled out her phone and sent a text, probably to Aiden, warning him about my approach. The rest of the evening proceeded exactly as I'd hoped. Vanessa and Aiden carefully avoided each other, both of them constantly looking over their shoulders. Lila kept making nervous conversation with the other women at their table, but her heart wasn't in it. By the time the gala ended, all three of them looked miserable. I drove home and was already in bed, pretending to sleep, when Vanessa returned. She moved quietly through the house, but I could hear her in the bathroom, probably removing her makeup and jewelry. When she slipped into bed beside me, I could feel the tension radiating from her body. How was the gala? I asked softly. Fine. Boring. The usual crowd. Did you have a good time with Lila? Yes. She's going through some things right now. What kind of things? Vanessa was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Finally, she said, Man trouble. You know how it is. Actually, I don't, but I'm learning. She didn't respond to that, and eventually her breathing evened out. But I could tell she wasn't really asleep, just as I wasn't really asleep. We lay there in the dark, both of us pretending, both of us knowing that everything had changed. Phase 3 would begin tomorrow. The next morning, Vanessa was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note saying she had early appointments and would be home for dinner. I knew she was probably meeting with Aiden, trying to figure out how much I knew and what they should do about it. I called in sick to work and spent the day with Miles, preparing for the next phase of our plan. We'd decided it was time to involve Lila more directly. Miles had discovered that Lila worked part-time at her father's real estate company, mostly as a favor to keep her busy. She had her own office, but rarely used it, preferring to conduct business over long lunches and shopping trips. At 2 p.m., I called her office. Lila Morrison. Hi, Lila. It's Derek Lawson. Silence. Then, Oh, Derek. Hi, how are you? Her voice was artificially bright, the way people sound when they're trying too hard to seem normal. I'm fine. I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Oh, well, I'm really busy today. Maybe next week? It's about Vanessa and Aiden Price. Another silence, longer this time. I don't know what you mean. Lila, we both know that's not true. I think it would be better if we talked in person, don't you? She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, away from her usual haunts. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in a corner booth and nervously stirring her latte. Derek, I want you to know that whatever you think you know, I know about the affair, I said, sitting down across from her. I know you've been helping Vanessa lie to me. I know about the money, the hotels, all of it. Lila's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide how pale she'd become. Vanessa is my best friend. I would never... You would never what? Help her cheat on her husband? Because that's exactly what you've been doing. It's not that simple. Actually, it is that simple. She's married to me, she's sleeping with him, and you're helping her do it. Lila looked around the coffee shop as if searching for an escape route. Derek, you don't understand. Vanessa hasn't been happy for a long time. She feels trapped, unappreciated. Aiden makes her feel special. And what about me? Don't I deserve to know that my wife has checked out of our marriage? She was going to tell you, eventually. When? After she'd spent all of Aiden's money? After she'd humiliated me in front of the entire city? Lila's composure finally cracked. She's scared, okay? She's scared of being alone, scared of not having security. You work all the time, you never want to go out, you don't understand her social needs. So it's my fault? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low and calm. Here's what's going to happen, Lila. You're going to stop enabling Vanessa's lies. You're going to stop covering for her when she's with Aiden. And you're going to start being honest with me about what's been going on. I can't betray my friend. You already betrayed me for months, so don't talk to me about loyalty. She started crying then, quiet tears that smeared her mascara. Derek, please, can't you just pretend you don't know? Can't you work things out with Vanessa privately? Why would I do that? Because if this comes out publicly, it'll destroy everyone. Vanessa's reputation, Aiden's marriage, my father's business relationships. Everyone will suffer. And there it was, the real reason for her panic. Not concern for my feelings or even for Vanessa, but fear that the scandal would reflect badly on her family's social standing. Should have thought of that before you helped orchestrate this mess, I said. I left her crying in the coffee shop and drove home, where I found Vanessa waiting for me in the kitchen. She was pacing, still wearing the clothes she'd left in that morning. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "About what?" "About last night. About that text message. About whatever game you think you're playing." I sat down at the kitchen table and looked at her calmly. "I'm not playing any games, Vanessa." "Then what was that message about?" "What message?" "Don't lie to me, Derek. Someone at that gala knows about my personal business, and I think it was you." "What personal business would that be?" She slammed her hand on the counter. "Stop it. Stop pretending you don't know what I'm talking about." "I honestly don't know what you're talking about. But I'm curious. What personal business are you so worried about people knowing?" For a moment, I thought she might actually confess. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned away from me. "Never mind. It's nothing." "It doesn't sound like nothing." I said never mind. She started to leave the kitchen, but I called after her. "Vanessa, that bracelet you wore last night, the one that belonged to your grandmother." She froze in the doorway. "I called your mother this afternoon, just to chat. I mentioned how lovely you looked in your grandmother's jewelry." Slowly, she turned back to face me. "Your mother was confused. She said your grandmother never owned any diamond bracelets, said she was more of a pearls and simple gold kind of woman." Vanessa's face cycled through several emotions: fear, anger, calculation, and finally resignation. "Derek, so where did the bracelet come from, Vanessa?" She sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap like a schoolchild called to the principal's office. "It was a gift." "From whom?" "A friend." "What kind of friend gives expensive jewelry to married women?" She didn't answer. "Was it the same friend who's been giving you cash? The same friend you've been having lunch with 3 times a week? The same friend you visited at the Marriott last Thursday?" Her eyes widened. "How do you know about all of that?" "Because I'm not as stupid as you think I am." We stared at each other across our kitchen table, the pretense finally stripped away. I felt oddly calm, like a fever breaking. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Long enough." "Are you going to divorce me?" "I haven't decided yet." "What do you want?" It was a good question. What did I want? A week ago, I might have said I wanted my wife back, wanted to repair our marriage, wanted to return to the way things used to be. But looking at her now, I realized that the way things used to be was probably an illusion too. How long had she been unhappy? How long had she been looking elsewhere for excitement and validation? "I want the truth," I said finally. "All of it." "And then what?" "Then we'll see." She took a deep breath. "His name is Aiden Price. He owns several businesses in the city. We met at a networking event 3 months ago." "Keep going." "He was charming and interested in my work. He offered to help me make connections, maybe get some clients for my event planning business. And one thing led to another." "That's not the truth, Vanessa. That's a summary." She flinched. "What do you want me to say? That I fell in love with him? That he makes me feel beautiful and important? That he listens to me and takes me places and treats me like I matter? Is that how you feel?" "Sometimes." "And the money?" "He likes to buy me things. He says I deserve nice things. While I'm working overtime to pay our bills." "I never asked you to work overtime." "You never asked me not to either. You were happy to let me stress about money while you played house with your boyfriend." She started crying then, but they seemed like calculated tears. Vanessa had always been good at crying at strategic moments. "I'm sorry, Derek. I really am. I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" "I don't know. I was just so lonely, and you were always working, and Aiden made me feel special." "So this is my fault?" "No, that's not what I meant." But it was exactly what she meant, and we both knew it. I stood up from the table. "I need some time to think about all of this." "Where are you going?" "Out." "Derek, please, can't we talk about this? Can't we figure out how to fix this?" I looked at her sitting there in our kitchen, beautiful and desperate and completely self-centered. "Some things can't be fixed, Vanessa." I left her there and drove to Miles's apartment, where we spent the evening planning Phase 4. 3 days later, I was ready for the final act. Miles had helped me set up what he called the perfect storm, a scenario where all of Vanessa's lies would be exposed simultaneously in front of the people whose opinions mattered most to her. The opportunity came when Vanessa announced that Lila was throwing a small dinner party for some important business contacts. She wanted me to attend, probably hoping that my presence would help maintain the illusion of a happy marriage. "It's just 8 people," she said. "Lila's father will be there, and some other influential people. It could be good for your career." I agreed to go, which seemed to surprise her. She'd grown accustomed to my declining her social invitations. "Really? You'll come?" "Sure, it sounds interesting." What I didn't tell her was that Miles would also be there, posing as a potential investor interested in Aiden's businesses. We'd arranged for him to be invited through a mutual acquaintance, and Aiden had no reason to be suspicious. The dinner party was at Lila's downtown condo, a sleek modern space that screamed expensive taste and family money. When Vanessa and I arrived, the other guests were already there. Lila's father, Richard Morrison, a prominent local businessman, 2 city council members, a federal judge, and Aiden Price. Seeing Aiden and Vanessa in the same room, pretending to be casual acquaintances, was almost comical. They were trying so hard to avoid each other that their avoidance became obvious. "Derek," Lila greeted me with artificial enthusiasm. "I'm so glad you could make it." "Thanks for inviting me. Your place is beautiful." "Thank you. Let me introduce you to everyone." She led me around the room, making introductions. When we reached Aiden, he shook my hand with what I'm sure he thought was casual confidence. "Derek Lawson, right? I think we met briefly at that charity gala." "That's right. You own the Lighthouse Club." "Among other things, yes." Miles arrived 20 minutes later, and Lila introduced him as David Chen, a potential investor from Boston. He and Aiden immediately struck up a conversation about business opportunities in Portland. Dinner was an elaborate affair. Multiple courses, expensive wine, the kind of meal designed to impress. The conversation flowed around topics like city development, business opportunities, and political connections. I played my role perfectly, asking interested questions and making appropriate comments. Vanessa seemed relieved that I was behaving myself, and I could see her starting to relax. That's when I made my move. "This wine is excellent," I said during a brief lull in conversation. "Aiden, didn't you recommend this vintage to Vanessa? She mentioned you're quite the wine connoisseur." The table went quiet. Aiden's face turned red, and Vanessa nearly choked on her drink. I don't think I've discussed wine with your wife," Aiden stammered. "Oh, I must be mistaken. Vanessa, didn't you say Aiden recommended that expensive bottle you brought home last week?" Vanessa was staring at me with pure panic in her eyes. No, I think you're confused." "Am I? My memory's not what it used to be." I turned to address the table generally. It's funny how couples can have completely different recollections of things, isn't it? Richard Morrison, Lila's father, was looking back and forth between Aiden and Vanessa with growing interest. He was a sharp man who'd built his business empire by reading people and situations. "Speaking of recollections," I continued, "Vanessa, didn't you say you were having lunch with Lila last Thursday? The day you came home with that beautiful bracelet?" "Derek, please," Vanessa whispered. "But Lila," I turned to our hostess, "didn't you tell me yesterday that you were in Boston last Thursday visiting your sister?" Lila's mouth opened and closed like a fish. The other dinner guests were now paying full attention to our conversation. "I think there's been some confusion," Judge Patterson said diplomatically. "Oh, I don't think there's any confusion," I said. "I think everything is perfectly clear." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Excuse me, David. Would you mind helping me with something?" Miles stood up and moved to where he could see everyone at the table. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting your lovely dinner, but I think you should know what kind of people you're associating with." I opened the envelope and began distributing photographs around the table. They were the pictures Miles had taken of Vanessa and Aiden together, at restaurants, shopping, entering the hotel. "These were taken over the past 3 weeks," I announced calmly. "As you can see, my wife and Mr. Price have been conducting an affair." Chaos erupted. Vanessa started crying and protesting. Aiden jumped to his feet and began denying everything, and Lila was begging everyone to calm down, but I wasn't finished. "There's also the matter of the money," I continued, pulling out bank statements and credit card records. "Aiden has been giving my wife approximately $1,500 a month in cash, which she's been depositing into a secret account." Richard Morrison was studying the photographs with the intense focus of a man who understood exactly what he was looking at. "This is preposterous," Aiden said. "These photos could be doctored, taken out of context." "Could they?" I asked. "Miles, would you show everyone the video?" Miles pulled out his phone and began playing a video he'd taken of Vanessa and Aiden kissing in the parking garage of the Marriott Hotel. The room fell completely silent except for the sound of Vanessa's sobbing. Derek, please stop, she begged. Please don't do this. Do what? Tell the truth? Judge Patterson cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all... There's one more thing, I interrupted. Lila Morrison has been helping them conduct this affair. She's provided alibis, helped coordinate meetings, and actively participated in deceiving me. All eyes turned to Lila, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. That's not... I never... She stammered. You never what? Never lied to me about where Vanessa was? Never helped her cover up hotel visits? Never encouraged her to continue this relationship? Richard Morrison's face was stone cold as he looked at his daughter. Lila, is this true? Daddy, I can explain. Is it true? She nodded miserably. Richard stood up and threw his napkin on the table. I'm ashamed of you. All of you. He looked around the table at the other guests. Judge Patterson, Councilman Williams, I apologize that you've been subjected to this situation. I had no idea. The judge and the two council members were already gathering their things, clearly eager to escape the social disaster unfolding around them. This is a private matter, Judge Patterson said diplomatically. I'm sure you can all work it out among yourselves. Within 5 minutes, the 3 prominent guests had fled, leaving only the principal players in our little drama. Aiden was the first to break the silence. Derek, I understand you're upset, but destroying everyone's reputation isn't going to solve anything. Isn't it? I asked. See, Aiden, you made a mistake. You thought I was just some boring computer programmer who would never find out about your little affair. You thought I'd be easy to fool. This is insane, he said. You're insane. Am I? Or am I just tired of being treated like an idiot? I turned to address the room. Here's what's going to happen. Aiden, you're going to end all contact with my wife immediately. You're going to stop giving her money, stop buying her gifts, and stop filling her head with fantasies about leaving her marriage. You can't tell me what to do. Actually, I can. Because if you don't, I'll make sure your wife learns about your extracurricular activities. And judging by what I've learned about Dr. Price, I don't think she'll be as understanding as I've been. Aiden's face went white. His wife's family money was the foundation of his business empire. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a choice. Make the smart one. I turned to Lila. And you're going to stop enabling my wife's lies. No more fake alibis, no more covering for her, no more encouraging her to destroy our marriage. Lila doesn't have to listen to you, Richard Morrison said quietly. But she doesn't have to live in my house or work at my company either. Lila started crying harder. Finally, I looked at Vanessa. She was huddled in her chair, mascara running down her cheeks, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. And you, I said softly, are going to decide what you want. Do you want to be married to me, or do you want to be Aiden's mistress? Because you can't be both. Derek, I love you, she whispered. I made a mistake, but I love you. No, you don't. You love the security I provide. You love having someone to pay the bills while you play with your boyfriend. But you don't love me. That's not true. Prove it. How? I stood up and walked to the door. Figure it out. As I left Lila's condo, I could hear the arguments starting behind me. Vanessa pleading, Aiden making excuses, Lila crying, and Richard Morrison's voice cutting through it all like a blade. Miles caught up with me in the parking garage. That was brutal, he said. It was necessary. So what happens now? I looked back at the building where my wife was probably still crying and begging for forgiveness she didn't deserve. Now we see what she chooses. But deep down, I already knew what she would choose, and I was ready for it. Vanessa didn't come home that night, or the next night. On the 3rd day, she finally called. Derek, we need to talk. Okay. Can you meet me at Murphy's Bar in an hour? Murphy's Bar. The same place where Miles had first shown me the photographs of her affair. There was a certain poetic justice to it. I'll be there. When I arrived, Vanessa was already sitting in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She'd lost weight, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked more like the woman I'd married 10 years ago than she had in months. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. Where have you been staying? At Lila's, though I don't think I'm welcome there much longer. Richard cut her off? Completely. No more allowance, no more job, no more condo. She's moving back in with her parents until she can figure out what to do? I ordered a beer and waited for Vanessa to continue. Aiden won't return my calls, she said quietly. I went to his club, but security wouldn't let me in. I think you scared him off. Good. Derek, I know you hate me right now. I don't hate you, Vanessa. I'm disappointed in you. I'm angry at you, but I don't hate you. She started crying, but they seemed like real tears this time, not the manipulative ones she'd used so often before. I messed everything up, she said. My marriage, my friendships, my reputation, everyone in the city knows what I did. Yes, they do. I lost my job too. My boss said I was too much of a distraction, that clients were asking questions. I wasn't surprised. In a city like Portland, gossip traveled fast, especially gossip involving prominent people like Richard Morrison and Judge Patterson. What do you want, Vanessa? I want to come home. I want to fix this. How? I don't know. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I studied her face, looking for signs of the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine remorse. Why? I asked. Because I love you. No, you don't. You might think you do, but you don't. That's not fair. It's completely fair. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent 3 months lying to me, cheating on me, and spending another man's money while I worked overtime to pay our bills. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You love the idea of me, I continued. You love having a husband who pays the mortgage and doesn't ask too many questions. You love the security and the respectability, but you don't love me? Then why are you here? It was a good question. Why was I here? Because I wanted to see if you'd learned anything from this experience. I have. I've learned that I took you for granted. I've learned that I was selfish and stupid, and... Have you learned why you did it? She stopped talking and looked at me with confusion. That's what I thought, I said. You know what you did wrong, but you don't understand why you did it. Which means you'll probably do it again. I won't. I swear I won't. Vanessa, 3 weeks ago you were telling me that your affair was my fault because I worked too much and didn't appreciate your social needs. Now you're saying you made a mistake and you want to fix things. Which version is true? Both? Neither? I don't know. That's the most honest thing you've said to me in months. I finished my beer and prepared to leave. Derek, wait. What happens now? Now you figure out what you really want. Not what you think you should want. Not what looks good to other people, but what you actually want. I want you. No, you want the life we had. But that life was built on lies and debt and your resentment. I'm not going back to that. Then what kind of life would you go back to? I considered the question. What would I want in a marriage? What would make me happy? I'd want a partner, I said finally. Someone who's honest with me, who makes decisions with me instead of behind my back, who doesn't treat me like an ATM or a safety net. I can be that person. Can you? Can you really? She nodded eagerly. Prove it. How? I pulled out a piece of paper I'd prepared and slid it across the table to her. What's this? It's a list of our debts. All of them. Credit cards, loans, the mortgage, everything. It comes to about $87,000. She stared at the numbers with growing horror. I had no idea it was so much. Because you never asked. You just spent money and assumed I'd figure out how to pay for it. Derek, I'm sorry. If you want to save our marriage, here's what needs to happen. First, you get a full-time job. Not part-time event planning, but a real job with real hours and a real salary. She nodded. Second, you take responsibility for half of our debt. That's about $43,000. You figure out how to pay it off. But that will take years? Yes, it will. And third, you go to counseling. Not couples counseling, individual counseling. You need to figure out why you were so unhappy in our marriage that you thought an affair was the answer. She was quiet for a long time, studying the list of debts. What if I can't do all of that? Then we get divorced. And if I can? Then maybe we can start over. Maybe. She folded the paper and put it in her purse. Derek, can I ask you something? Sure. When did you stop loving me? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on her betrayal and my anger that I hadn't really considered my own feelings. I'm not sure I have stopped loving you, I said honestly, but I definitely stopped liking you, and I stopped trusting you, and I stopped respecting you. Can you ever respect me again? I don't know. That depends on what you do next. She stood up to leave, then turned back to me. Derek, why didn't you just divorce me when you found out about the affair? Most men would have. I thought about it. Because I wanted you to face consequences for your actions. I wanted you to understand that your choices have real effects on real people. I wanted you to lose something that mattered to you. And did I? What do you think? She looked around Murphy's bar, the kind of working-class place she would have turned her nose up at 6 months ago, the kind of place where people like Aiden Price would never be caught. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I did. After she left, I sat alone in the booth for another hour, thinking about everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Miles. "How did it go?" I typed back. "She's going to try to make things right." "Do you think she can?" I looked around the bar, at the regular customers nursing their beers and watching the game on TV. Normal people with normal problems, people who worked hard and paid their bills and didn't create elaborate deceptions to justify their selfishness. "I don't know," I texted back. "But for the first time in months, I'm not angry anymore." And that was true. The rage that had been burning in my chest for weeks was gone, replaced by something that felt almost like peace. I'd gotten my revenge. Vanessa had lost her boyfriend, her best friend, her job, and her reputation. She was facing the consequences of her actions for the first time in her adult life, but more importantly, I'd gotten something back that I'd lost without even realizing it: my self-respect. I finished my beer and drove home to our empty house. Tomorrow, Vanessa would start looking for a full-time job. Tomorrow, she would begin the long process of paying off the debts she'd helped create. Tomorrow, she would start therapy. And tomorrow, I would decide whether I wanted to be married to the woman she might become. But tonight, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. 6 months later, I was working late at my computer when Vanessa came home from her job at a marketing firm downtown. She looked tired, but satisfied, the way people look when they've put in an honest day's work. "How was your day?" I asked. "Busy. Good busy, though. We landed that account I've been working on." She'd been promoted twice since starting at the firm, and her boss had mentioned that she was being considered for a management position. The woman who'd once thought $800 a month was adequate income was now earning more than I was. "That's great. Congratulations." She kicked off her shoes and sat down on the couch next to my desk. "Derek, I have something to tell you." I looked up from my computer, noting the serious tone in her voice. "I paid off my last credit card today." It had taken her 6 months, but she'd managed to eliminate her share of our debt. She'd worked overtime, taken on freelance projects, and lived on a budget so strict it would have horrified the old Vanessa. "How does it feel?" "Scary," she said with a laugh. "I keep waiting for some bill I forgot about to show up in the mail." "But good scary." "Yeah, good scary." We'd been living as roommates for the past 6 months, sharing the house but not the bed, working on our individual issues while trying to figure out if we had a future together. "My therapist thinks I'm ready," she said quietly. "Ready for what?" "To be married again. To you, I mean, if you still want to be." I saved my work and turned to face her fully. She looked different than she had a year ago. Older, maybe, but also more solid somehow. More real. "Do you know why you had the affair?" She'd been working on this question in therapy for months. "Because I was afraid," she said. "Afraid of being ordinary, afraid of getting older, afraid that I'd married the wrong person and wasted my life. Aiden made me feel special and important, like I was the star of my own movie instead of just a wife. And now? Now I think being just a wife to the right person might be enough. More than enough." I studied her face, looking for signs of the woman who'd lied to me for months while spending another man's money. "I'm not the same person I was a year ago either," I told her. "I'm not going to work 80-hour weeks to pay for a lifestyle we can't afford. I'm not going to pretend everything's fine when it isn't, and I'm never going to trust you completely again." She nodded. "I know. Can you live with that? Can you?" We looked at each other across the space that had separated us for 6 months. Two people who'd been married for 10 years, but were just now learning who they really were. "I think so," I said. "So what happens now?" I thought about it. We could try again, build something new on the ruins of what we'd had before. It wouldn't be the same marriage we'd started with, but maybe it could be a better one. Now we see if we can fall in love with who we actually are instead of who we thought we were supposed to be. She smiled, and for the first time in over a year, it looked completely genuine. I'd like that. So would I. I closed my laptop and took her hand. "Come on," I said. "Let's go to bed." "Derek?" "Yeah? Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you for becoming someone worth not giving up on." We walked upstairs together, two people who'd learned the hard way that love isn't enough to make a marriage work. You also need honesty, respect, and the willingness to face consequences for your actions. But sometimes, if you're very lucky and very determined, you can find those things too.